So the story out of Denver this morning by the NFL Network's James Palmer is they might not upgrade their quarterback position in the draft. Denver believes they have options outside of picking number 9. Translation, Teddy Bridgewater or Jimmy Garoppolo. People say they're leaning to Teddy Bridgewater. I like Teddy Bridgewater. He is a Band-Aid. Denver doesn't need a Band-Aid at quarterback. They need surgery. Jimmy Garoppolo, for all of his injury history, is one of the easiest, safest guys in the league to acquire. You bring him on for a year. If he gets hurt, there's no cap hit by year 2. His contract now is very doable for the Niners or for anybody. Listen, I like Teddy Bridgewater. He's a Band-Aid. He's really hard to sell to a locker room. Hey, we're going to compete against Justin Herbert, 6'6" with a huge arm, and Patrick Mahomes, and we got Teddy Bridgewater. Garoppolo at least feels big on the marquee. He looks, the face, the model, the arm, the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo in his career is 24-8. That's 75% win total. Well, it's Kyle. No, because Kyle can't win when he doesn't play. I think Garoppolo's the easy one here. I think it's very hard to sell Ryan Fitzpatrick to a locker room if you just made the playoffs. I think for Denver, in a division with Mahomes and Justin Herbert, these are other world talents. It's hard to sell Teddy Bridgewater. It's easier to sell a guy that's been to a Super Bowl. And we can say what we want about Garoppolo. In the 1 year he was healthy, he had 27 touchdown passes. That's in a run-centric offense. Teddy's never thrown for more than 15, even in Minnesota. Matt Rule opted to go with Sam Darnold, who many perceive as a bust, over Teddy Bridgewater. Matt Rule, quarterback guy. So if Denver is considering a quarterback, remember, 2 people have fallen in love with Garoppolo, Belichick and Kyle Shanahan. Arguably the best or second best offensive guy, the best defensive coach, and arguably the best coach all time and the best young coach. They're all in on Garoppolo. Big arm, can move a little. He feels big. I think for certain teams in the NFL, I don't know how Washington sells Ryan Fitzpatrick to that locker room. Guys know he's been around the league forever. I think Teddy Bridgewater's a Band-Aid. I think he's really hard to sell. Vic Fangio's in his last year in Denver if he doesn't win. You got to be able to sell that quarterback. It's not like Fangio's in year 8. He's won 7 of them. The players believe in him. Denver goes 1-4. Players will bail on Fangio. They'll go their own way. He's got to win the locker room, not just games, because there's doubters as you look around that division. They have the least dynamic offense. Their defense is a mess last year. So if you're going to go down to Garoppolo and Teddy B, and I like Teddy B, he feels much more Band-Aid than surgery, and I think Denver needs the latter more right now in that locker room and on that roster. Joy Taylor with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
There's been a lot of talk about Devontae Smith's size since he reportedly weighed in at 166 pounds, but he doesn't think his weight has anything to do with his potential in the NFL. He said, "We play football. We're in a football business. We're not weightlifting. We're not bodybuilders. It's football. That's what we're here for. All the other stuff is irrelevant." He did win the Heisman last year.
He did.
117 receptions, 1,856 yards, 23 touchdowns. He had 68 receptions, over 1,200 yards, and 14 touchdowns the year before. I really actually like Devontae Smith. I guess his size is the reason even before this, they were talking about Jamar Chase and Waddle over him. Not only is he a really great route runner and he gets separation, he's very mature. Listening to him talk after the bowl game, that's not an easy thing to do. To be able to stand up there after a bowl game on live television, your whole team is there. Like he's a very impressive young man on top of that. I actually think that a team is going to get a steal with Devontae Smith. I understand he isn't the biggest player, but he's going to be an outlier, and I get that they don't want to take a high risk on that as a high pick. But if you use him correctly, he can be very effective.
Well, Michael Irvin told me the other day in a podcast, he said, today it used to be that all receivers had to go over the middle. He said,
Right.
but if you use him in certain ways, it's a lot of stuff. It's throws either behind the line of scrimmage or close to it. So you're not asking him to go 18 yards into the teeth of a safety who can bear down. Michael said the league's different now. You don't take the beating at wide receiver. If you use him right, if you have another receiver and you can use him on underneath stuff and bubble screens and this stuff, he's so explosive, he'll be very productive. But Michael's take was, in my era, size was huge because Michael told me the story. Troy Aikman used to just say to him, he called it a bang route. It was called a bang 8. He'd say, in the huddle, he'd say, Michael, it's a bang 8. Go up and get that ball. And Michael said, that meant you're going to get smoked. So it was called a bang 8. Michael said, when Troy looked at me once, twice a game, go up and get the ball, what meant I was going to get crushed.
Right.
That route, that's not part of the NFL to that level anymore.
Exactly. I mean, Joel said this with us, Joel Klatt, when we talked about Devontae. Like, they moved him around a lot. If you just put him on the outside and expect him to go get it every time, like, that's not going to be effective. I get teams not wanting to use a high pick on him because he does feel like an outlier, but I think he's going to be very valuable wherever he ends up. So Kyle Pitts is one of the most coveted players in this year's draft. The Falcons are in prime position to get him at 4. With the 3 teams ahead of them taking quarterbacks, but Pitts isn't convinced that's where he'll end up. He said he believes the first 4 picks in the draft this year will be quarterbacks, which is kind of interesting because he's talking to these teams. Now, that's just his opinion, obviously, and maybe the Falcons are telling him kind of we're definitely going to take you, maybe, but just don't say that.
Well, I was thinking this morning, we all kind of feel like we know the top 3 picks, despite the Adam Schefter report that the Niners are going either way. I think they've decided on Mac Jones. They're covering their butt a little, but who knows?
Right.
But I think most people have actually moved off of Atlanta taking a quarterback. I mean, almost every mock draft I look at now, even the well-connected people, is Kyle Pitts at 4. But we were talking about this in the team meeting this morning, that what if Atlanta just goes and goes out and gets Trey Lance? Man, it changes because I'm Cincinnati. I'm like, I already have T. Higgins. Now I'm going to give Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, his career could be elevated by one moment tomorrow. If Atlanta goes quarterback, you have first of all, for young quarterbacks, tight ends are hugely important.
Yeah.
And go look at the Super Bowls last 6-7 years. Tight ends and productive tight ends are a huge component in the last 7-8 year Super Bowls. Can you imagine Joe Burrow? And by the way, Joe Burrow loves Jamar Chase. But if you got a tight end...
you have to take Kyle Pitts in that
because
spot.
They already have Joe Mixon. They have T. Higgins.
Yeah.
Their offensive line is not awful. It's not great, but it's not awful.
You know what I was thinking about yesterday? Because we were just not talking about Zach Wilson and the Jets at all. What if the Jets don't take Zach Wilson? Like, we've all just decided that's where he's going, and it seems like that. But, like, what if they didn't? Then what happens? That's total anarchy. Because we're just not talking about it. We're just all it's just submitted that that's where he's going.
I was talking to an executive yesterday on television. He said, what if Justin Fields falls? He goes, do you know what the ratings will do? He goes, what's great drama is not just the early quarterbacks, but one sitting in a green room not being picked.
Oh, yeah.
He goes, the ratings will just, because also Fields has been talked about. He played at Ohio State. Aaron Rodgers was dropping, but nobody knew Cal. Nobody knew Aaron. Everybody knows Justin Fields. If Justin Fields drops,
even Trey Lance,
the drama is going to be massive for it.
Can't wait for tomorrow night. So the Cowboys will have a lot of options at the 10th pick in the draft tomorrow. The most likely need for them would be to fill a need on defense. And Jerry Jones thinks that they'll have a good chance to get the top, or at least one of the top defensive players in this class. He really feels like the top 9 picks could all be offense, which they very easily could. According to Fox Bet, the favorite to be taken at 10th is Patrick Surtain. J.C. Horn is second, plus 225, and Rashawn Slater at plus 400. Micah Parsons actually plus 400, and Kwity Paye at plus 650. They are at 10. So if you look at the draft order, obviously we know we're assuming that what you just said is not going to happen and Justin Fields isn't going to drop like that. So that there are going to be 5 quarterbacks taken. Then you have the offensive linemen. You have Jamar Chase, Waddle, Kyle Pitts. Could very easily be the first defensive pick in the draft at 10.
Listen, Dallas has 10 picks. And just Dan Quinn's an upgrade defensive coordinator. If they went 8 to 9 picks like Carolina and just go all defense, Dallas could transform a side of the football. When you have the 10th pick, and I think they have multiple thirds and fourths, Dallas could get